there's one line in this first episode of Sister Sister that really made me feel quite old for a moment, and I'm only 29, I'm not even that old. I will tell you what that line is in a second. But I decided to watch the first episode of Sister Sister because I had no recollection of it, and to be honest, even though I know I would have seen this TV show and I was aware of the basic premise, I couldn't really remember anything about it, the style of the comedy, or anything like that. So I decided to watch it, and I was really, really thoroughly impressed with just how funny and entertaining this is, because I wasn't expecting it to be that engaging for me as a fully grown adult. Yes, perhaps when I was younger, but it's actually brilliant. So, this first episode was released in 1994, and it's about Tia and Tamera, two twins who were separated at birth. This is all explained to us in this first episode. And they meet each other in a very repetitive scene in a clothing store. And I will say that that scene went on for maybe a minute or two too long. That's probably my only complaint about this. I feel like they could have tightened that up a little bit. But then they happen to meet each other. They look identical, of course. They recognize themselves in the other person, and they begin to realize that since both of them were adopted, the adoption agency had separated them both and adopted them out to different families. I'd say that that would never happen and is unbelievable, but there have been cases reported of twins and triplets being adopted out to separate families just looking for one child. So, as unlikely as it is, definitely not impossible, especially in the 90s. And when they meet each other and they establish that they look alike, they both in unison say their date of birth. And their date of birth was such and such 1979, which means they would have been about 15, maybe 14, depending on what month it was. I can't remember exactly. And that's, I never expected them to mention the 70s at all. So that shook me for a moment. And it does feel dated. Of course it does. The fashion feels dated. But obviously the use of technology is 1994. I was 2 years old. Smartphones, not a thing. Internet usage, barely a thing. It does feel dated, but the humour does not. I feel like the comedy that comes across in this is pretty timeless. Certainly in this first episode, that may change as it goes on, but a lot of that humour as well comes from Roger, who I will talk about in a second. The rest of the episode, once they've established that they were twins separated at birth, obviously this is aimed at children or preteens, it doesn't really go into much detail about that. They end up living together. I won't say how that happens, just in case you decide to catch up with this. I believe this is on Netflix and Prime at the moment. They end up living together and getting to know each other, and I assume the episodes thereafter are about the adventures they get up to as twins, and I'm quite excited because I probably will continue watching this. There are 6 seasons, and I'm kind of curious to see what happens when they introduce each other to their own friends. And I expect their friendship groups are very different, because one of them is kind of labelled as being more outspoken, one of them is a little bit softer in nature. I can't remember if it's Tia or Tamera off the top of my head. Roger. Roger is one of the girls' friends to begin with. He's a year younger, but he's quite a bit shorter. He looks a lot more juvenile, and he is hilarious. He's played by Marques Houston, and he is absolutely fantastic. Very quickly became one of my favourite characters in any TV show ever. I just thought his performance was absolutely brilliant, and I truly am quite excited to see what else this character brings to the table. Definitely having him in his first episode was a great hook, because I think the comedy coming from this character can really be expanded. I really genuinely gobsmacked by how funny I found this first episode. I genuinely didn't think it would be that entertaining. Definitely looking forward to watching it. If you've never seen Sister Sister, because as I said, I'd seen it, I couldn't really remember it. But if you've never ever seen it, absolutely give it a go. This is the kind of shows we grew up with in the 90s and early noughties. This is the humour we were exposed to, and I feel like there's a beautiful level of innocence to it. Really looking forward to seeing what else is in store. If you were a big fan of Sister Sister, let me know. I'd love to know if it was something you were raised on. But for me, I just kind of dabbled with it. Obviously, in '94, I was 2, but it was on repeat on Nickelodeon, I want to say. Quite a lot over the years. A lot of fun with this first episode. Really looking forward to the rest.